Welcome to Humane Voices, the official podcast of the Humane Society of the United States. So, HBO Max has a new limited series called Chimp Crazy. It looks at some folks who brought baby chimps into their lives as pets, and the series kind of shows how that works out for them. Chimp Crazy is a really good title, I think, Kelly, because
it is indeed, Chad.
These people are nuts about chimps. Kelly, sorry, my co-host to my left. How you doing, Kelly? Everything good?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited because I like to talk all things TV. So this brings both of my worlds together.
Absolutely. Well, we've got two guests to talk, two expert guests to talk about primates in captivity. Laura Hagen, Director of Captive Wildlife at the Humane Society of the United States, and Greg Garcia, Director of Animal Care at Black Beauty Ranch, an animal sanctuary, an amazing animal sanctuary in Texas. Thanks for being here, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So Chad, I got to ask you something.
Go, please.
And I'm going to full disclosure to both of you, and I know you're going to shoot me down on this. I'm going to play devil's advocate because, you see these baby chimps, and in Chimp Crazy, and I've seen it on other, TV shows and things, they're dressed in dresses or overalls. Seem to be a lot of overalls in this particular limited series. I'm not sure why. But they look real cute, and they seem to be living their best chimp lives. Go ahead and argue with me about that. Tell me that is not true, even though they look happy, right? But what say you? We'll start with you, Laura.
Yeah, I think that question in and of itself, in a nutshell, really summarizes the concerns that we see with keeping wild animals and particularly primates as pets, right? People see them on TV, and now even more so, it's actually on social media is one of the biggest platforms where we see these animals exploited, and they make the mistake of believing that these animals are just like us, or they're just like their dog or their cat, and they're appropriate to keep as pets. And I think what Chimp Crazy has done is to help bring to light to the general public, messaging that HSUS has been sharing for years, which is that behind these animals that you see on TV or with, Paris Hilton, there's an incredibly dark and sad story behind these primate faces. It really the reality of what these animals face is that they're intelligent and highly social animals that are forced into essentially solitary confinement with unqualified caretakers. And, the system that feeds one person's desire to keep a primate or dress that animal up as a cute plaything or bring them to the family barbecue ultimately results in, psychological and physical, lifelong psychological and physical suffering for these animals.
But it's not only, so that's interesting from what it does to the animals. There's a whole public safety issue here too, right? I mean, they're really cute when they're little, but I have a feeling when they age a little bit, things change. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Greg can probably speak to this directly and from experience, but even though these animals are born in captivity, they are still inherently wild and unpredictable animals. They're aggressive, they're hard to care for, and they can also transmit numerous diseases to people. And they are a very big health and public safety risk.
So, Greg, they don't stay cute in their little PJs. They grow up, I assume grow big, and then that does become a risk, correct?
Well, absolutely. We anthropomorphize them in some regards. Like Laura was saying, it's not like a dog or a cat, where over generations they've been domesticated and be able to serve a niche, a role to play. These are wild animals, and they have specific needs that are extremely difficult to be met in a captive setting. And it takes a lot of money and a team to really truly meet those needs. But yeah, as they get older, they go through maturity, and they don't have a primate group to socialize with. So they get frustrated, they get severe anxiety, those kinds of issues, and it comes out in the form of aggression, or at least it can. And that's why we end up with some of these stories that we hear.
Well, and I think we saw that in the show. There were, some of the chimps were isolated. I know one of the main chimps in there, Tonka, is by himself. So I think that speaks to they're not, in addition to all of the numerous issues, they're not socialized. And so to give us some context on the issue. Do we know about how many primates are in U.S. households?
Unfortunately, no, and that's part of the problem. There's a patchwork of state laws across the U.S. Non-human primates are prohibited in some states. Other states, they're required to have a permit. Some states have zero laws. And even where there are state or local laws, they're very, very poorly enforced. We've seen non-human primates being sold by dealers in states where those animals are prohibited as private pets. And so there is no federal tracking system, and that's one of the big problems. Your neighbor, your family members don't know what they're walking into. Law enforcement doesn't know what they're walking into when they enter homes and may run into one of these primates that they don't understand. And they're putting themselves, individuals who own these animals are putting themselves and their family and their neighbors at risk.
It sounds like this patchwork of laws that are willy-nilly all over the US. It sounds like it's easier to get one, but I don't have a chimp guy. Like, I don't know a guy who I could reach.
You don't have a connect?
I know. How are people getting these animals? They're not for sale on Amazon, I'm guessing, but
everything else is. Let's hope they're not.
I don't think they are there, but it is surprisingly easy to buy a non-human primate. I mean, I'm not going to provide step-by-step directions, but it is Googleable, I will say, to find. And, again, you can go online. Social media, again, has been another really big new outlet for the breeders and dealers to sell these animals. And people will pay anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars to purchase these animals. Some of the breeders actually provide financing, and they'll deliver the animal to someone who is interested in purchasing one of these animals. So it's a very robust and lucrative industry for the folks who are either breeding and selling or brokering these animals.
And I have a question, and Greg, you could probably answer this. I think there are some people that think, this is awful. We shouldn't own primates, obviously. And if they're rescued, we can just send them back out into the wild. And that is not possible, correct? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's no. Short answer, no. Long answer is because, like I said earlier, because there's no socialization, they really need that. These primates are very social animals. They rely on the groups to learn, to understand how it is to be a primate, much like people do when they're growing up. So they really need that. If they don't have that, you're really setting that animal up for failure if you're just reintroducing them back in the wild. If that's something that you would like to do, that is a generational thing. There's other animals that were in the process of reintroducing into the wild for conservation efforts, and it's a multi-generational aspect to actually get those animals back out there. You just can't release an animal and it's like, okay, you're free now. They're just not going to thrive. They're not meant to do that. They need the support group, and it also depends on the environment. If you got an animal that's from Africa and you're releasing them in Texas, it's right. Not quite the same.
Well, and can't they even, Greg, can't they get diseases in captivity that then could spread too?
Absolutely. You got a lot of different zoonotic diseases depending on the type of primate that you have. You could get sick if you're the pet owner, and if you actually do reintroduce them, you could actually introduce that disease into the environment, and it could be catastrophic for the local animals and people.
And I think one element of, we were talking about the non-human primates who are kept as pets and how they suffer when they're warehoused in someone's home, essentially. But another aspect of this whole industry that's kind of the darks, well, it's all dark, but, that's left in the dark, I should say, is that, the mother primates who are kept in these breeding facilities and are bred over and over again. And then when the animals are born, they are separated very quickly from the mothers so that the breeders can, take the animals, put the little diaper on them, put the dresses on them, and get them ready to be sold to an individual. And the mothers provide, I mean, obviously we know this, right? Like our mothers told us how to be humans, how to operate in the world. They gave us, nutrients that we needed. They taught us how to behave with others, and primate moms do those very same things. And so these primates who are sold in the pet trade have no benefit of those very basic things that their mothers are supposed to give them. And it's very traumatic for both the mother and the infant when they're separated.
And I think Laura, I think you were in on some early discussions with the filmmakers on this thing. As this is a Netflix show, and I think PETA is mentioned a few times in the show. They certainly play a role. But it seemed it kind of goes back to Tiger King, the other Netflix show that was kind
Yeah,
of
and I think
animal
that
based.
that was Netflix, right? This one was HBO.
This was
or
HBO. I might have
Max.
misspoke there. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But there's a connection between the two, right?
Yeah, there is. And I should say, that I did not connect with the filmmakers on this. So I don't want to take
Okay.
credit, where I don't want to take credit where it's not deserved.
You weren't an
Yes,
executive producer on this.
I wish. My bank account would probably be bigger. But yeah, PETA was involved because they were involved in a lawsuit against an Endangered Species Act lawsuit against, kind of the primary character, if you will, in this HBO series. But yeah, there is a connection between Tiger King and Chimp Crazy, which is, they're made by the same director, of course. But I think that importantly, what they both show is a theme, of people who raise and breed and sell and, just generally exploit wild animals, either to get their name in the media, get attention, or just to, promote their own fiscal bottom line. And I think overall, I will say, I think Chimp Crazy did a better job of showing the fallout that animals face, when they are unwilling participants in humans' lives in these, domestic environments. And I think, Chimp Crazy is 4 episodes long. It only focuses on chimps. And so I think it really just scratches the surface, of private ownership of non-human primates. What we hope is that, like Tiger King did eventually, that it will help to promote a better understanding of how these animals suffer, of the danger that they present, to the people who own them and everyone around them, and law enforcement and their local communities, and eventually, Tiger King, kind of that awareness allowed the Big Cat Public Safety Act to be signed into law. It's one of the things I kind of say about these stories and about these exhibitors and breeders and dealers is, like, you can't make this stuff up, right? As you're saying, you can't make this stuff up, but it's a little hard for lawmakers to kind of comprehend and understand. And so these docuseries really put it together in a way that really helps to paint the picture of what animal protection groups and sanctuaries, the message that we've been sending, which is that this is a problem. It's a big problem. It's a growing problem, and lawmakers can do something to address it. And so I'm hopeful that Chimp Crazy will lead to, passage of the Federal Captive Primate Safety Act, which would prohibit, private possession and trade of non-human primates.
That would be
That's
great.
an important point. I think that there is, when viewers watch this, they probably have a lot of takeaways, but there's actually things they can do as well, because this is really heartbreaking for the animals. I think it was Kitty Block, the HSUS CEO and president, called it a tragic, toxic, love was kind of at the heart of Crazy Chimps. And I think that is true. And if folks want to love an animal, our shelters are overrun with plenty of dogs and cats that would love to maybe not have you put diapers on them or overalls, but would love a good home. So I think that's great that there is something to do. And Greg, for folks that watch it, and you touched on this earlier a little bit, how we tend to give, human traits to animals. And folks think, oh, they are so cute, or I want to help them, or, what can they do in terms of, you work at an amazing, as Chad said earlier, sanctuary. Folks, I suppose could support sanctuaries. What can they do in lieu of owning, obviously, a chimp and being up close to them and touching them?
Yeah. So if that is something that is interesting to the individual, and they are Googling, a facility that's nearby them, I recommend first doing your research on the facility. But it's just sharing the passion. You can still have a passion for wildlife, and not have to own one. But yeah, it comes down to just basically doing the research and truly understanding what it is that facilities are doing.
I was going to say, I think from the advocacy perspective, if you go to humanesociety.org, you can search Chimp Crazy on our website and you'll see the blog that Kitty Block recently posted on this. There's a button where you can click to take action, email your federal legislators and ask them to co-sponsor, support, the Captive Primate Safety Act. I think, Greg was talking about research, as people head out with their families to do things on the weekend, do your research, look at if you're planning to go to a place that exhibits animals, don't only visit zoos that are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums or sanctuaries accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. Don't visit zoos or other attractions, that sell interactions with primates or other wild animals. Going and buying a ticket, it just props up their bottom line. And then if you take a selfie with those animals and you share it on social media, you're becoming part of the problem because you're normalizing interaction with primates and these, other wild animals. And I think, the last thing we can do is, Chimp Crazy focused on a couple of the chimps who were featured were chimps who were used in entertainment. They were used in movies or TV shows. And while chimps are not used with much, well, really at all anymore in TV shows and entertainment, other non-human primates are. Right now there's a show called Animal Control on Fox that's using a capuchin monkey, a show called Bad Monkey on Apple TV Plus that's also using a capuchin monkey. You can Google the executives, email addresses for Fox and Apple and send them a quick email and tell them that, you're not going to subscribe to the networks or watch these shows if they're using live animals completely unnecessarily. So I think, there's a number of things you can do on this issue that would make a big difference.
Absolutely. One more thing I wanted to mention, just talk about the pop culture element. And I think somebody mentioned Paris Hilton earlier. You get these stories every once in a while that some celebrity gets a primate as a pet, like on a total whim, I'm sure. And that one media hit does probably so much damage to the non-human primates out there.
Like Laura said, it really makes it okay and acceptable to have these and like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. That's completely fine. The power and influence that celebrities have is pretty impressive. And for individuals to take on these pets, things like that as a status symbol, or just to be different, really does impact that community in a negative way.
Yeah.
And research has actually, there's been a number of different, kind of pieces of research that have shown that imagery is actually helping to fuel the primate trade. And it actually leads people to believe that these animals are not endangered in the wild when they are, and actually decreases the likelihood of, people contributing to conservation. They just go in the opposite direction and use that money to buy one of these animals, unfortunately.
Laura and Greg, thank you so much for telling us about this situation. Chimp Crazy is on HBO Max. If you want to see some of this insanity, I don't know.
Buy a primate. Do not bring a primate into your home. It seems like that's the big takeaway, right, Chad? Laura,
that's
Greg?
The takeaway. Don't buy a primate.
Wild animals are not pets.
Yes, exactly. Right. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. We'll have you on soon to have an update on this important issue, and we'll be back next time with another episode of Humane Voices.